Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Over the years, I have predicted comeback baits of the year and talked about the baits that I felt like made a really good resurgence. In fact, I did a video a few days ago about the 2024 comeback bait of the year where I called it a jerk bait. And there were a bunch of different reasons for calling it a jerk bait. Mostly it just came down to the fact that a jerk bait is become a staple in every tournament angler's arsenal across the country, no matter what time of year it is, no matter what species of bass. Heck, most species of game fish at this point are eating a jerkbait. And I feel like 2024 was the year where we just unlocked the jerkbait's potential. We saw a lot of different baits come out, a lot of new styles of jerkbaits. It just was a really good year for the jerkbait. In 2023, we saw the jig head minnow really establish itself as a huge comeback of the year. I mean, a round ball head with a straight tail minnow was something that had been around forever, but all of a sudden it just became not just the staple in every angler's arsenal, but like it was one of those baits that a lot of anglers had multiple rigged up on the deck of their boat. And then uh, from that standpoint, we look at 2025 and I start evaluating what baits I think could be a good player. And if you take the jig head minnow and you take the jerk bait out of it, because they've already been comebacks of the year, then I start looking at the other different classes of baits and I look at the tournaments and the places that all the major trails are going. And I try to look for baits that I think are starting to be unlocked similar to how a jerk bait was. Everyone thought a jerk bait was a cold water bait, and what other baits are out there that, have kind of a really single niche, but are so much more versatile than that. So when I look at the schedule, I think of the schedule that I've got, we've got a lot of natural lakes where you're or not natural, but like clear water type bodies of water where you're gonna know that your jig head minnows are a player. But they're also the types of bodies of water where I think a lipless crankbait could be a major player. And that's just not my schedule. It's pretty much every organization's tournament schedule has definitely places where you can go and fish a lipless crankbait. So for me, the first one we're kicking off at Sam Rayburn, potentially the best lipless crankbait fishery in the country. uh, Now, having said that, I know it's not necessarily the hot technique there, but it is such a proven technique there that it would not surprise me to see somebody go and catch monster bags doing it. Then we go to places like a Norfolk Lake, a Kentucky lake, where in the spring period, you never know. Lipless crankbait does not have to be fished around grass, and neither of those fisheries really have any grass at this point. But you've got a lot of shallow water, a lot of flats, a lot of shell beds, a lot of off-colored water where a lipless crankbait really does shine. So again, it wouldn't surprise me to see somebody get into a back of Kentucky Lake in the back of a creek there, or get into the back of a creek at Norfolk Lake and find a bunch of fish with a lipless crankbait. So from that standpoint, I think you definitely could have a major player there. When you go up then for the last one we have is up on Leech Lake, a grass fishery up north. It could happen where somebody unlocks a good grass line bite with a lipless crankbait. And that's just my stuff. I mean, when I start looking at the other fisheries that places are going to, there's a lot of Texas lakes being fished. There's a lot of Florida lakes being fished. There's a lot of river type stuff and delta stuff or tidal water stuff, like the James River and the Potomac River. There's a lot of grass on the schedules this year. And I think a big part of that is when you look at the schedules. Now, no organization has actually said this, but when you look at the schedules, I personally think that the organizations are trying to schedule in a manner where they're at a location at a time of year where it's not strictly a forward-facing sonar event. And because of that, you're seeing a lot of these locations that do have good shallow water capabilities. But the key here is, again, not necessarily just that we're going to fisheries where this could be good, but what I said earlier in the video was I also think there is potential with this bait where a lot of anglers haven't fully unlocked the capabilities of it. So, a couple things that I know I utilize a lipless for. I love yo-yoing it down deeper, steep banks. I love fishing it on shell bars. I love actually even bumping it off laydowns and things like that if it's not really thick, heavy cover. But the other areas where I love throwing it are for some of your offshore suspended fish, especially around schoolers. But I think somebody is going to be able to take these and figure out a really good way to fish it effectively for forward-facing sonar fish. There's times where the loud noise and the aggressive action generates those reaction strikes. And for me, the last big question with respect to like forward-facing sonar is how do you trigger those fish that are not aggressive into biting? And that to me goes right back to being able to trigger a reactionary strike. And your jig head minnow is generally not the best bait for doing that. Now, it doesn't mean you can't aggressively reel it past the fish and kill it and try to get them to trigger it. I think it's one of the reasons why a jerk bait is still one of the major players because it is a very good bait at generating reaction strikes. But a lipless, like this jack, which is a new one, is one of those styles of baits that does generate those reaction strikes. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for anglers still to unlock the potential of their favorite lipless crankbaits. I know for me, it is a bait that I've got on the deck of my boat year round. It works on all bass species, so that's one of those baits you can see somebody work throughout the entire season. And then the last big aspect to being kind of the comeback of the year is if you start seeing companies put some money into development of them. And for a long period of time, I felt like the lipless crankbait was pretty stagnant. You had a lot of staples on the market. You still have those staples on the market, but you're starting to see companies now actually put some money into development of new products. And a prime example of that is the whole Berkeley Jack series of baits. But they're not the only ones. If you go to Tackle Warehouse right now and start going through the various lipless crankbaits, there are a lot of new style baits that are popping up. And that just shows the industry, which generally has their their hand on the pulse of the baits and techniques that are starting to pop off. And that is just based on the fact that the high end tournament anglers, the top level tournament anglers, are direct contacts with these companies. So you better believe that when a tournament angler sees something that they think they need, they tell the companies to build them. I mean, that's just how it is. And there's a lot of input from company or from anglers to companies that kind of dictate the direction that the production process goes, the R&D, the new products that are coming out. And when you start seeing companies come out with new products, a lot of that has to do with the fact that anglers are behind the scenes figuring out a way to make that technique very productive. And I can assure you that is going on with lipless crankbaits right now. And the best way to tell that is that there's a lot of new baits coming out in that category. And because I have a lot of angler friends, we talk a lot, and I know guys are throwing lipless crankbaits a lot. So we'll see. Will my comeback of 2025 prediction, the lipless crankbait, be accurate? I'll let you know at the end of the year when I go back and review the season and determine whether or not it was truly a comeback of the year. I know for me, I'll have one tied on at pretty much every tournament I go this year. I love those things. So thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new one coming out tomorrow for you.